the Polar Express. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound. A sound a friend had told me I'd never hear. The ringing of Santa's sleigh. "There's no Santa," my friend had insisted. But I knew he was wrong. Late that night, I did hear a sound. Though it wasn't the ringing of bells. From outside came the sound of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through the window and I saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it, and a conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest and he looked up at the window. I put on my slippers and robe and I tiptoed downstairs, out of the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course. This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand and he pulled me aboard. The train was filled with other children, all in their pyjamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat at centres white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of the town and village flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon, there were no lights to be seen. We travelled through the cold and dark forests where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the great wilderness. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if they would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster, faster we ran along, rolling over the peaks and through the valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, and the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance, and they looked like lights of strange ocean linears sailing on frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." The North Pole. It was a huge city, standing alone on the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first, we saw no elves. They are gathering at the centre of the city, the conductor told us. That is where Santa will give the first gift. "Who receives the first gift?" we all asked. The conductor answered, "He will choose one of you." "Look," shouted the children, "the elves!" Outside we saw hundreds of elves as our train drew closer and closer to the centre of the North Pole. We slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped and the conductor let us outside. We passed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells as they hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us, and pointing at me, he said, "Let's have that young fellow here." He jumped up into his sleigh, and the conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked me, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine. But the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled, and then he gave me a hug and told his elf to cut a bell from the reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it over to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him, and he called out, "The first gift of Christmas!" A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me and put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out to the reindeer's names, cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed up into the air. Santa circled once above us and then disappeared in the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached inside my pocket, but the only thing I could feel was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. "Let's hurry and look for it," one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children, and I stood at my doorway and I waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled. He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Merry Christmas!" he shouted, and the Polar Express let out a huge blast from its whistle and sped away. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small little box underneath the tree with my name on it. And inside was the silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C."
What Mr. C?
I shook the bell, and it made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard the sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as the years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found that one Christmas that she could no longer hear the sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. And that was the story of the Polar Express.
That